Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today, we're going to be talking about the Bridge Youth Program. It's out of Fresno City College, but the employer or organization that covers it is ResCare Workforce Services. We have Rodney, Casillas. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about this program. We call it the Bridge Youth Program, right?
It's actually called the Fresno County Bridge Program. It's a collaboration between ResCare Workforce Services along with Fresno City College and Fresno County.
So your role in that is what?
As my title indicates, I'm the leader. For what that means is specifically I lead our youth. We work with approximately 40 youth every school year, getting them going at Fresno City College. And when I say we get them going, we do every step or assist them with every step from bringing them into the program, helping them with their Fresno City College application, financial aid. We do placement testing in our office, so sometimes they don't have to wait in those long lines at Fresno City College in the heat. And then once that's set, we actually set them up in their classes. We assign them. They have priority seating in our classes, which is 4 subjects. And then they also get their own Fresno City College counselor, and they get me, access to me, Bridge Youth Leader. And I'm like their mentor, their assistant, their tutor, everything throughout the entire semester. It's a 1-semester program. So at the end of the semester, we kind of set them going on 3 different paths. One path is to remain in education, help them continue with that. We do that by way of setting them up with a student education plan so they can know exactly what classes they need to take for the next 2 years to graduate on time. Another option that they have is they do vocational training, so they can select something that's a little bit more short term. Sometimes that college thing's just a long distance.
There, yeah.
Sure, it's a long dedicated path, but some choose a little bit shorter path, vocational training. And we have a ton of variety of different vocational trainings that we're able to offer: medical assistant, culinary arts, dental assistant, just a long list, security guard training, things like that. The third option that we can offer them at the end of that semester is employment, full-time permanent employment. We assist them in that path. So at the end of that semester, they get to make that choice for themselves in terms of what they want to do with the program.
Where do the youth come from? I mean, do they voluntarily enroll themselves, or do parents enroll them?
It's a completely voluntary program. So a lot of our youth, believe it or not, come from word of mouth. They come from the community, from Fresno County. We work with a lot of foster youth. Initially, this program was designed to assist specifically foster youth. We have opened it up a little bit to non-foster, but the plan is still to work specifically with foster youth through this program. The foster community is definitely a population in the community that is very much in need of assistance. So this program was designed with them in mind. A lot of our foster youth, when they're aging out at 18, for a long time didn't have assistance, didn't have even a home to stay in. Pretty much a lot of foster families would tell them, you're booted, you're out. So when this program came along, that was one of our biggest challenges, was helping them with that step. Fortunately, through the assistance of Assembly Bill 12 here in California, a lot of foster youth are now able to stay in care until the age of 21. So that's huge. That's gigantic, because now foster youth can stay in care. They don't have to worry about having a roof over their head or food in their mouths. They can focus completely on their education or vocational training or employment.
Do we have a big problem with need for foster assistance or
Absolutely.
even foster care homes? I mean, there's a lot of people who may not think about that aspect. It's a total different thing, but you deal directly with these foster youth. Would you say that there's a need there?
Oh yes, there's definitely a need, specifically because the reality is that foster youth is a tough population. They've come from a very varied background. Sometimes there's a lot of abuse, neglect, things like that. They come from families that have dealt with drug abuse and alcohol abuse. So their situation, sometimes the issues they have to deal with are pretty heavy. So having a stable home for them can sometimes prove a challenge. They don't always agree with the family that they're staying with. They don't always see eye to eye. So it's up to the county to try to find a new placement for them. So it's important that they're able to establish a proper home or at least somewhere where they're comfortable and can focus on their education and their lives.
What are some of the reasons someone would go into foster care? And the reason I ask you the question is because we have this kind of generalized stereotype that if someone is in foster care, they're there because they're bad, they did something horrible, they're doing drugs, and they can't get along with their parents.
Right, that's a stereotypical idea that we hear all the time. The reality is that a lot of foster youth are in care because mom and dad were doing things that they weren't supposed to be doing, and the children have been taken out by CPS and then relocated to group homes or foster homes, things like that. So sometimes it's not their fault at all. In fact, most of the time, I would say it's not their fault. It's in things that are going on in their lives that they have no control over. Sometimes it's because parents gave up on them at an early age and left them for adoption or left them up to the county.
Is that happening a lot, or would you say with parents? Are they, I mean, we hear the stereotype that, sometimes parents will have the kids and then just let them go and get raised by the neighbor
Well,
or the parents.
I can't say a whole lot in terms of if we see that happening a lot. I work with a very small population and percentage-wise in terms of all the Fresno County foster youth, so I really couldn't speak a whole lot about that, but I can say that it has happened and we've seen it happen.
I want to ask you off topic, but out of curiosity, you're dealing with foster kids and, you're dealing with an age where it's tough to deal with. Even I was a
Sure.
little smart alecky at that age. Why do you do what you do? Because your job can be stressful.
Well, the simple reason for me was I remember when I was 19 years old and 18 years old, and my background, my parents were mostly monolingual, not too educated, and so having been there myself where I didn't have anywhere to go in terms of if I wanted a job or I wanted help with education, there was no option for me. I had to learn a lot of those things on my own on the fly in terms of where to go, what to do, who to talk to. So my goal as I was growing up, as I was hitting my 20s, was I want to give back to that age group. I want to be a part of, I want to be one of those people that they can come to and I can give them an answer. I can give them the guidance they need to get on the right track towards education or towards employment. That's always been my goal. And along that way, I've been able to work with a lot of variety of populations, farm workers, as well as welfare recipients. But ideally, my goal was always to work with youth.
Is it ever too late? I mean, sometimes we say we see someone bad and we see someone doing things illegally or abusing drugs, and we tell ourselves, it's too late for that person. What would you respond to that?
I would say it's never too late. I don't think we can ever give up on our youth, and I've never believed that. I think if we would have done that, there's a lot of youth who would have fallen to the wayside. In fact, in our program, that's something we always think about is how many youth have we helped that maybe if they didn't receive our assistance, they would have ended up on a more difficult path or in trouble with the law or things like that. So our opinion is that we never give up on our youth. If they are willing to better themselves, we're continuously willing to work with them, to assist them, to guide them, to mentor them so that they can stay on the right track.
Speaking of mentoring and guiding youth on the right track, are you finding that this education or this stuff you're teaching them is something no one had taught them before?
Oh, definitely. We constantly see that. Sometimes you would think that by the time they're 18, 19 years old, they would have learned some things that we're working with. Even simple things like basic skills like a handshake or eye contact or saying hello. Things that we would think of as everyday normal things. A lot of our youth are not, they don't know how to do that. Very simply put, they have no idea what a firm handshake feels like, or sometimes they're constantly looking at the floor or just not making eye contact in general. So those are some simple, what we call soft skills that a lot of our youth today just don't have.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think a large part of that too is also not just the things that are happening in their lives or the way they've been brought up, but even the technology that we're dealing with. A lot of our youth are used to talking in 140 characters or less, and sometimes that doesn't always translate when you're trying to talk to an employer or trying to talk to an instructor at Fresno City College. So a lot of our youth are having to be taught some of those things along the way through our program.
How many youth would you say you assist annually or monthly? I mean, I don't know what the tracks are for you, but can you give us a number annually?
In our program, we provide support and guidance for over 130 to 200 youth, sometimes more every year.
Which can be huge because if that youth, that population, I mean, 130, 140, you say, that's not that much. But if you think about it, if they didn't go through your program and they were on the streets, what would happen?
Exactly. Where would they end up then? They would end up locked up at county, or they would end up doing drugs, or some other horrible thing that could happen to them. And so the fact that we're able to assist them in a different direction, and the reality is sometimes those youth still fall back into those things, but there's also a large group that don't. There's a large group who stay on the right track, who are able to keep their jobs and stay in school. And even though, we see a lot of statistics on TV or we hear about them in the news that a lot of youth are failing, but the reality is there are a lot of youth that are also succeeding. And it's probably, hopefully, at least we like to think, in large part because of what we're doing with them.
I'm going to play instigator here, and I'm going to push your buttons and ask you, and who cares? I mean, I have my own issues. I have my own problems. I work full time. At the end of the day, why should I care about this youth? Why should I care about programs like yours? Why can't I say, you know what? That child or that youth has parents and family members. Let them deal with it.
No, the first part to that is some of them don't. Some of them don't have parents. Some of them don't have that guidance. So the larger part of that is then that falls on the community. Sure. And so us as part of the community, we have to work with those youth. We have to guide them, even if they're not our kids, or even if we say, oh, well, they'll figure it out. The reality is sometimes they won't. And so they need programs like ours to help them figure those things out, figure life out, and get on the right track. So I think the other part of it is those same youth are in our community. They're in our lives every day. They walk by us in the street. They're the ones that we see every day walking around or on their skateboards or doing whatever it is that they're doing. Those youth need guidance too. And if we don't give it to them, if we're not willing to assist them and work with them, then maybe they won't get it. And then they end up in a different path.
Who in your organization is the one that tells the youth that are a part of it that, you know what, you're dressed inappropriately? I mean, sometimes I go to the mall or sometimes I'll go shopping and I'll see people dressed totally inappropriate. Whether their pants are sagging,
sure,
or they're wearing inappropriate names on their shirts,
or even tattoos in weird places.
Right. And so who is the bad guy or the bad girl per se?
Well, in our office there is a dress code, and we have it clearly labeled at the entrance of our office, and so it actually falls on all of us. Whoever works there, whoever comes into contact with our youth, it falls on all of us to kind of sometimes be that person to say, hey, you know what? You're not really dressed appropriately. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And it has happened. Sometimes they're dressed a little too inappropriately. And sometimes they have to hear that because they're not understanding that. They're not getting that. And they're not understanding that when they're going to an employer or they're somewhere in the real world, that's just not going to fly. And so it really falls on all of us, at least in our location, in our office, to give them that nudge to let them know that what you're wearing or how you're dressed today or it's just not working out and you're going to have to change.
You work with a lot of employers. Talk about the process. If I'm a youth or I have a cousin or a family member or a friend that is in the age group that you service, what are the steps they take to get a job with one of your employers?
Well, once they've enrolled into our program, one of the major things that we're able to offer employers is a 120-hour work experience. And what that basically means is you're getting free labor.
Whoa. So if I understand this correctly, I don't mean to interrupt, but if I'm an employer, I can bring on one of your youth and you'll pay their bill?
That's right. We'll pay their salary. We pay their workman's comp. They are our employee. The only difference is they're housed at your location. You're the one that's training them. You're the one that oversees them. But at the end of the day, we're the ones that are liable for them. We're the employer of record. So we take care of all the bills.
How can we, as employers, let's say, tap into some of your employees? I mean, is there a process, or are you looking for major corporations?
We have job developers on site who are constantly making connections with employers. So employers are more than welcome to contact our office. They can actually speak to our program director, Joseph Oaxaca. I can provide that phone number if you like.
Yeah,
Area code 559-499-3760. And they can talk to him directly. He would then refer them to one of our job developers and they would make contact with them. We're constantly looking for employers in the community who would be willing to give that work experience opportunity to our youth. And believe it or not, it's not that easy. A lot of employers are just like, I just don't want to bother. I just don't want to deal with this kid who I'm going to train.
Right.
They just don't want to deal with it. But at the end of the day, a lot of employers they do it and they feel good about it after, because not only do they give back to the community, they're also helping find a potential employee, a good employee, someone who they've now trained and they've been able to see firsthand that, hey, this guy's he's a lot, he's got it, he knows what he's doing.
So is there an agreement or something that they hire the employee afterwards? I mean, is there an unspoken kind
No,
of?
not at all. If at the end of the 120 hours they feel like, you know what, this guy's just not a good fit, it doesn't look like it's working out, they have that option to decline that portion of it. But the truth is that a lot of our employers do see the benefits of hiring our youth. They see them firsthand that they're not as crazy or they're not as bad as they thought they were going to be, and they do end up hiring quite a bit of our youth.
Some of the youth that are in your program, I'm sure, are ambitious. How far can they go if they come into your program and do everything right?
Well, it's easy to say that the sky's the limit, but that's the truth in our program. If a youth comes in and they're really dedicated, they will do the steps in our program. They will meet their academic goals. They'll do the job readiness workshops, and they will get careers. They will get jobs, and they will get education. They will stay on track with their education, and the truth is they can continue on with that. They can continue on with college, get their degrees, eventually move into some other field that they're really interested in doing, or they can stay on employment, establish a career, get some kind of vocational training which will help them develop into that career, and then they stay in that field. So it's very possible for our youth to become successful if they follow the guidelines, if they follow the steps. At the end of the day, what we tell a lot of our youth is that it's all on them. If they are eager and they are dedicated, they will find success. But they have to make those steps happen. They need to, we can push them, we can guide them, we can encourage them, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to cross the finish line. And we find that there are quite a bit of youth who are doing exactly that. In fact, if I could share a success story with you.
Please do.
We have a youth who initially was a foster youth, came through our program seeking assistance to go to college. He had been incarcerated at one point in the foster care system from an early age. He ended up going to college, and he actually ended up being hired onto in our program. He's one of our youth mentors. Yeah, he's one of our youth mentors. So a lot of times we see him in our resource room talking to our youth, working with them. He has since then has gotten married, has a child of his own. His wife is going to Fresno City College. So both of them are continuing on with their education, while at the same time now giving back to the community as well.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the work that you've done with the farm worker community, because off camera when we were getting to know each other, you had talked about the farm worker community. And right now as we record this show, it's about 110 degrees outside.
Right.
And there are farmers out there, farm workers out there working hard over there. Talk about the population a little bit.
Well, it's definitely a hard-working population. I actually got to work with farm workers, farm laborers from 2001 to 2004. So I got to know them very, very well. And one of the biggest things I found is that they are one of the hardest working population out there, because they're doing some of the things that I know personally I never had to do. And I'm very happy that I never had to be in 100-degree weather outside. But the truth is, they're doing it, and they're doing it every single day. They're the ones that put the grapes on our table, or the vegetables or the fruits that we eat every day. They're out there working hard, harder than a lot of us probably do at our job sometimes.
Then you've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of families who are farm workers, a lot of generations that do that. What are some of the things they say to you? Do they want to get out of there?
A lot of them do. A lot of them do. They feel like they're better than that. That they can aspire to be better, and that's good. Especially if they really feel that, if they really feel like they can do something about and they do. A lot of them. For a while, I was actually teaching for a very short time. I was teaching English to Spanish speakers in Sanger, and a lot of those people were coming through our program because they wanted to learn English. They wanted to better themselves. They wanted to maybe not necessarily become doctors or nurses or anything like that, but at least do something that's a little bit better, a little bit more important to them. And some of our farm workers that didn't do those things, they were mostly caring about providing for their family. And that's huge too, because they wanted to see their kids get the education that they couldn't get at that age. So a lot of them are working for their children, for their wives, and so that those individuals and their family can get up there and can get in a better position.
Do they think that the community looks down on them? I mean, I don't know if this is too general of a question or you can answer or not, but when you were talking to the farm workers, did they appear like they had this perception that the community looks down on them?
Some do, and that's just the reality that some of them do believe that. My father was a farm worker for many years of his life, and he had that opinion to some degree that they're kind of looked down as a lower part of the community, the forgotten people to some degree. Some of them are very proud. Some of them are very proud because they know what the work that they're doing, how it affects the community, how the community is taking value in that, and that we eat those products, and they know that they're the ones that made it happen and put it on our table. But the truth is that a lot of them also do feel the negative part of that they are not a major part of the community, that they are looked down upon. In fact, one time I was doing a community outreach project where we asked some of those same people to voice their opinions and their concerns, and one of their biggest things was, why should I care? Why should I vote? Why should I be involved? No one cares what I think. No one cares because I'm just the guy that's in the fields while you're driving by in your Mercedes or whatever. So a lot of them had that opinion. A lot of them had those ideas. And unfortunately, as part of my job at that time was to say, you know what, you can do something better in your life. And we had to encourage them, even though sometimes they didn't believe it.
Interesting. Let's go back and talk a little bit about the youth some more. The vocational training you have, can you talk about it? And the reason I'm asking you the question is because sometimes you're going to get youth, which that school is not for them, but you give them a bunch of parts and they're going to make you an engine. Or
Sure.
If you give them a car that's dismantled, they're going to put it together and paint it like you've never seen before. And I don't want to generalize as, mechanics or body shop workers, but I'm saying that some people do other things other than education. Talk about the vocational program.
Well, as part of the All Youth One system that is made up through Workforce Connection and all these agencies, a lot of our youth are able to obtain a variety of vocational training. And a lot of it is related to the medical field. Medical assistance, phlebotomy is very popular. But there's also a wide variety of security guard training, believe it or not. We have a lot of youth who are able to obtain employment as security guards, stable employment, full-time employment. The culinary arts, there's a lot of youth who are able to obtain jobs and I'm not talking about just McDonald's job because they have a certificate in culinary arts. They're able to get jobs in restaurants, sometimes high-class restaurants. So the vocational training, and one of the things that's really cool about how we're able to offer it is it's a scholarship. It's a scholarship to our youth because at the end of the day, a lot of these short-term vocational schools are expensive. They're very pricey. So sometimes these youth, they apply for financial aid, and that would cover a small portion of the cost. But the rest of the portion, that's covered by the board, the Workforce Investment Board. So it's a scholarship awarded to the youth for the remainder of the cost of that training. And there's a vetting process for that. Our youth, it's not just, we don't just have any youth walk in and say, oh, I want to be a chef.
Right.
Make me a chef. That's not how it works. There's a vetting process where they actually meet in front of a group of individuals who are interview them and make a determination if they would be a good candidate for training. And then at that time, then they're awarded the training. So there's a lot of things we look at. They have to have very specific reading and math levels. You can't just come in at 4th and 5th grade levels and say, oh, I want to be a mechanic or I want to be a medical assistant. There's requirements that they have to meet.
And you help them get there?
Absolutely, yes. We offer online academic upgrades for reading and math specifically. And after they complete those upgrades, then we kind of make sure that they would be good employees. We have them do a job readiness workshop, and they're trained on interviewing and have a resume and how to talk to employers, how to dress for interviews. And then it's at that time where we discuss some of those options, specifically possibly going on to college or short-term vocational training.
Talk about the fast food industry or the lower-end jobs, and those people look at as negative, and I'm sure some of your youth look at it as negative as well.
Sure.
Why we're running out of time this week, but briefly, why should they start there?
That's the first step. That's the first step in the ladder towards success. At a lot of those muck jobs, as we like to call them sometimes. I've
never heard of that, by the way.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
It's a common term in our field, but a lot of those muck jobs are where they actually gain a lot of the soft skills: how to talk to customers, how to make change, how to handle money. They learn responsibility. They learn about working a specific shift, certain time frames, managing their time, learning a variety of skills, not just cashiering, also food service, also food handling. So those jobs are where a lot of our youth start. And sometimes they walk in the door saying, "I don't want to work at McDonald's. That's not why I came here." But then, and not that a lot of our youth are placed there, but when they are able to get those jobs on their own, they're able to feel that, hey, I accomplished this. I learned a lot of this stuff from Workforce Connection, from ResCare Workforce Services, and I learned how to do this, and I learned how to get this job, and now I'm establishing my career. I'm establishing some experience that maybe I didn't have before. So a lot of times it's those entry-level jobs that give them experience that they didn't have at all before. So they're coming out of high school, they're coming out of wherever, sometimes without having a diploma, having no work experience. It's those entry-level jobs in retail and food service that sometimes give them that experience.
Are you looking for more youth to come through your programs?
We're constantly looking for youth to come through our programs. We're always recruiting. Fresno City College is constantly looking for youth. So through our program, we're recruiting. We're recruiting all the time. We actually have right now at our program, Monday through Thursday, we have orientations at 2 p.m. So they're able to come in at that time and find out a little bit more about our program. It's on a walk-in basis, so they just come in at 2 at any Monday through Thursday at 2, and they can talk to one of our recruitment specialists about getting enrolled into our program and getting onto the right track.
How can people find out more information?
They're more than welcome to call us at our office. It's area code 559-499-3773. That's our main number, and they can call and find out more information about where we're located and what our orientation times are.
Rodney, thank you so much for coming on the program this week.
Thank you for having me.
That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. Our guest this week has been Rodney Casillas. Rodney is a Bridge youth leader with ResCare Workforce Services. Thank you to the volunteer crew that made this and every production possible. Thank you to 90.7 KFSR Fresno. And for everybody listening to the program and watching, tune in next week for a new edition.